Previously, we have shared about cases of traveling to a parallel universe. At that time, I wondered if these people came from a parallel universe, what would their world be like? Would that world also have another version of myself, and how could they travel through space and time? Let's dive in. On an afternoon in March 2010, a sudden fierce storm hit the town of Lajamanu in Australia. In an instant, dark clouds filled the sky. Passers-by hurriedly crowded under shelters to avoid the rain. But the strange thing was that shortly after, people began to hear a very peculiar sound, and then suddenly, many fish appeared on the ground. Moreover, when they landed on the ground, most of the fish were still alive. Wow, this is really interesting. People no longer sheltered from the rain but rushed to catch the fish. At that time, many experts said the reason fish fell from the sky was due to a waterspout. This is a type of tornado or whirlpool over the sea. When it forms, it will sweep fish from the sea into the air. After the waterspout comes into contact with the ground, its structure is destroyed, and thus the fish fall from the sky. Although this explanation is scientifically logical, it is still just a hypothesis. The biggest reason is that the wind speed inside the tornado usually ranges from 64 to 177 km per hour. Why do the fish survive after being spun at such high speeds and falling from such a height? Not only that, in many cases, the locations where fish fell were not coastal areas but deserts located 326 miles, about 525 km from the coast. An article in Natural History magazine even recorded that in Kata, India, fish once fell in a very peculiar straight line, as if time and space suddenly cracked open and hurled a large amount of fish into our dimension. This is a very reputable scientific journal, not some tabloid. Moreover, the article discussed this issue at length. This has led some people to wonder whether space-time is not always stable and immutable. Sometimes it can bend or even intersect, and when this happens, people or objects nearby may cross into another space. Incredibly, throughout history, there have been repeated cases of space-time travel. Some cases even involve traveling to parallel universes. Some might be skeptical, thinking I am talking nonsense. Sorry, but I am not, because in 2015, NASA captured evidence of a collision between our universe and another. So what exactly is this? Today, let's talk about the multiverse. Hello everyone, I'm Akashic Records. In ancient times, people believed that everything in the world was created by gods. Until science became the mainstream, humans began to believe that life evolved from a series of random compounds, and even tried to understand the formation of the world from the Big Bang. In this context, in 1989, NASA successfully launched Explorer 66. This was the first satellite created specifically to explore cosmology. According to the Big Bang theory, at the moment of the Big Bang, thermal radiation would be evenly distributed throughout the universe. Therefore, proving the existence of this radiation would indirectly prove that the explosion had occurred. Indeed, shortly after Explorer 66 was successfully launched into space, it actually captured the cosmic microwave background. From this moment, humans finally understood the process of the universe's birth. However, after confirming the existence of the microwave background, NASA scientists noticed a strange event. In the microwave background images sent back by the explorers, cosmologist Anthony Aguirre discovered something that shouldn't exist: a massive cold spot. Normally, the cosmic microwave background is evenly distributed throughout the universe. Although some areas might be colder, the average temperature difference would only be about 0.000018 Kelvin. However, in this chart, there was an area that was even 3 degrees colder than its surroundings. This suggested that this area could be a void. But how could there be a void in the universe? NASA wasn't about to give up, so in 2001, they launched another satellite, WMAP, to capture a clearer picture of the universe's background. Once again, WMAP confirmed the existence of this massive cold spot. At that time, British professor Tom Shanks and researcher Rory Mackenzie, who were the first to receive the image, could not believe their eyes. They conducted their research in utmost astonishment. After countless experiments, Tom Shanks finally determined that this kind of cold spot could not exist in the universe unless it had collided with another universe. In other words, this cold spot not only confirmed the existence of parallel universes, but also the possibility of collisions between them. It is important to note that, based on some indications, ancient people thousands of years ago had long known about this. Mahabharata is the third longest epic in the world and was written in the 8th century BCE. In this extremely long book, there are many inexplicable mysteries, including a story about time travel. It is said that a long time ago there was a very powerful country in India. This country was ruled by King Kakudmi. The king had a very beautiful daughter named Revati. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also very intelligent, so much so that the king wanted to find the perfect man in the world for her to marry. But the world is vast and there are many men, so who is the perfect man? Just as the king was extremely confused, he suddenly thought of the creator deity Brahma. The god who created the world would surely have the answer. So the king summoned his spaceship. After 10 days of flying, he finally reached the heavenly abode. Unfortunately, at this time, Brahma was enjoying a concert, so the king had to wait. Fortunately, the concert was not too long, and after a few minutes, the king met Brahma, who agreed to the king's request and provided a suitable candidate for his son-in-law. However, after a 27-day flight, when the king's spaceship landed on Earth, he found that 27 years had passed on Earth. By this time, those whom the king knew had either died or become very old. In the end, the story concludes with the king facing a sudden catastrophe, like a lightning bolt from a clear sky. This was originally just a tragic legend, but surprisingly, the seemingly baseless story aligns with Einstein's description of time travel in the twin paradox. A thought experiment by the scientist Einstein describes a classic case as follows: the older brother of a pair of twins leaves Earth at the speed of light, and when he returns, he finds that his twin, who was the same age, has aged significantly. The important point is that this seemingly unbelievable thought experiment has been confirmed by NASA. In 2015, NASA conducted a very special life exploration experiment. They sought out a pair of twin astronauts, Scott Kelly and his brother Mark Kelly. Since they are identical twins, they have the same genes. NASA sent Scott into space to stay on the International Space Station for 340 days, while his brother Mark stayed on Earth. Upon Scott's return, they would compare the genetic changes between the two to study the effects of living in space on the human body. Everyone, take a look at the photo NASA released. Does it show that the one who went into space and lived in a microgravity environment actually experienced some changes? With higher temperatures, Scott appeared to look younger. After examinations, NASA discovered an unexpected finding: the telomeres in Scott's cells were longer than those of his brother who stayed on Earth. Normally, in the human body, as cells repeatedly divide, telomeres gradually shorten. Research on cultured cells has shown that as telomeres shorten to the point where they can no longer protect chromosomes from damage, cells stop dividing or become unstable and are eventually replaced. It turns out that telomeres are like the candles of life. Once used up, life is exhausted. In other words, the shorter the telomeres, the older we become. This means that Einstein's theory is true. But how did ancient Indians know this by 2015? Could it be that the story of King Kakudmi actually happened? Not only in India, but Japan also, there exists a legend about Urashima Taro, who visited the Dragon Palace, and when he returns, he finds that 100 years have passed in the human world. Or a story of Master Kwang Ting visiting the Western Paradise for a day, and when he returned to the human world, 6 years and 5 months had gone by. So if these events were not just stories but real occurrences, then could the Heavenly Palace, Dragon Palace, or Western Paradise also exist? Could these places be the parallel universes we often talk about? Surprisingly, as humans began to ponder and focus on the existence of parallel universes, a notable case of time travel occurred in the US. In 2010, a website named The Beatles Never Broke Up suddenly appeared on the US internet. James Richard, the website's founder, stated on the homepage that what he was about to say would seem incredible to most people. This was also the reason he chose to release this tape, as it was irrefutable evidence of the existence of parallel universes. All of these began a year earlier. James recounted that at 2 p.m. on September 9, 2009, when he had just visited a friend living in Turlock and was about to return home in Livermore. Afterward, since he had some free time, he decided to take a scenic route through the canyon. The National Highway had magnificent canyon views, but was sparsely populated. However, after driving for a while, he noticed his dog was unusually restless. So James thought letting the dog out for a bit would help, and he pulled over. Unexpectedly, after opening the door, the dog ran wildly ahead. James immediately chased after it, but, in the process, fell and lost consciousness. When he woke up, James found himself in a very strange room. The room was filled with machinery he had never seen before. For a moment, James did not know where he was. In his confusion, a man walked in and James immediately asked where he was. The man told James that he was less than 6 miles from where he had lost consciousness. James responded that this was impossible since there was no one living within a 32 km radius around Debo Canyon. He asked, "Did you misspeak?" The man said, "I'm not mistaken. You are currently in a parallel Earth." James recalled, "When the man told me this was a parallel universe, I thought I must be dealing with a crazy person. But this crazy person not only answered all my questions but also started telling me about events happening on their Earth, saying that just a few days ago, the Beatles had held a concert of the century. I was completely shocked because the Beatles had broken up in the 1970s and members John Lennon and George Harrison had passed away years ago. How could they still hold a concert? Perhaps because he saw I didn't believe it, the man led me to a room full of tapes. He pointed to the tapes and said that on their Earth, the Beatles had never broken up and had even released many more albums. However, since the albums were very expensive, he had copied them himself. The man then picked a tape and played it. James said, "As a Beatles enthusiast, I could confirm that this album had never been released by the band, so from that moment, I was completely convinced that I was indeed in a parallel Earth." According to James's description, the man in front of him was named Jonas. On their Earth, traveling to parallel universes is permitted. However, despite being legal, this type of travel is highly risky. There are countless parallel universes, some are similar to Earth and some are completely different. Therefore, when exploring new universes, as the traveler passes through the so-called gateway or portal, the traveler might die in some ways. Sometimes by falling from a height, sometimes by drowning, or sometimes by fire. Generally, this is a form of extreme adventure travel, but just like extreme sports, many people are still willing to take risks. To minimize risks, a new profession has emerged on their Earth space dimension brokers. The main job of a broker is to explore unknown parallel universes and confirm in advance that the positions where the portal opens is safe to reduce travel risks. Jonas is a space dimension broker on the parallel Earth. That day, while exploring Earth, Jonas by chance found James unconscious and took him to the parallel world for treatment. Interestingly, according to James's description, besides the existence of the Beatles, there are many other things different the space-time of our Earth in the parallel Earth, such as ketchup being purple there, KFC being Mr. KFC instead of Colonel Sanders. Due to the uniqueness of this experience, James asked Jonas if he could take an album of the Beatles back as a souvenir. Unexpectedly, Jonas, with a serious face, said that it was not allowed for safety reasons. "You cannot bring anything from this universe back." James did not understand and asked why it was not allowed, but Jonas refused to answer further. Later, while Jonas was not paying attention, James secretly slipped the tape into his pocket. At the end of this journey, James was returned to the room where he first woke up, and Jonas was operating the machine beside him. Next, James heard the machine running, and shortly afterwards, the air was filled with a strange substance. There was even a sense of dampness, but the clothes were not wet. And at the moment when James was focusing on his clothes, he found himself back on the desert road he was initially on. The process happened very quickly, so quickly that James even doubted if he had actually experienced all of this. Therefore, he unconsciously felt his pocket, and fortunately the tape was still there. Everything had indeed happened very obviously. After this story was made public, it immediately led to widespread discussion. This is because the voice in the tape sounds very much like the Beatles. However, some people believe that it might just be a remake album by the Beatles or an unreleased work. But the strange thing is, if this is just an album that the band never released, then the remaining two members could come out and debunk the rumor. But they never did. So many people still believe the story is true, including quite a few prominent scientists. As everyone can see, the concept of parallel universes is no longer just a plot in science fiction novels, but a topic that many scientists have discussed. One of the biggest reasons is related to the fact that the universe is so vast. As everyone knows, according to scientists, the universe was born about 13.8 billion years ago. We know this because the oldest galaxy observed by humans is 13.8 billion light years away from Earth. However, 13.8 billion light years is only the age of the universe, not its size, because the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate, and this expansion speed exceeds the speed of light. Therefore, by the time the light from the oldest galaxy reaches us after 13.8 billion years, the edge of the universe is no longer at its original boundary. In fact, according to scientists' calculations, the current size of the visible universe could have reached a diameter of 93 billion light years. The reason we haven't seen this is because the light from there hasn't reached Earth yet. This raises a question: if we cannot see the entire universe, how can we be sure there is no other universe beyond ours? For example, suppose an ant lives in our house. Then for that ant, our house is its universe. It even thinks that the world only has one universe, but it doesn't know that in this world, countless universes simultaneously exist. It just can't see them. Therefore, for scientists, it's impossible to be certain that there is only one universe. This means there could be many universes. Perhaps beyond the observable universe, there are other universes. This is also the famous bubble theory. The bubble universe theory states that at the moment of the Big Bang, countless bubbles were created, each bubble being a universe. Because the distance between these bubbles is so vast, typically civilizations living in these bubbles cannot see each other. However, in the accelerating expansion of the universe, some universes may collide with each other, forming what we refer to as a cold spot. With all this said, what everyone wants to know the most is if there really are parallel universes, do we have a chance to travel to another universe? The answer is yes. In 1954, Hugh Everett, an American quantum physicist, first proposed the many worlds theory. In this theory, he believed that our world is constantly splitting every minute, every second, since everything in the universe is made up of atoms, and atoms are composed of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Scientists have discovered that when electrons are not observed, Their state can be spinning to the left, right, up, or down, and their actual state can only be determined at the moment the observer sees it. So if electrons in the universe allow for multiple possible outcomes, doesn't that mean the universe has the potential to exist in multiple versions simultaneously? Maybe in some universe, I am not a YouTuber but an astronaut or a hypnotherapist, or even a singer. In short, in the multidimensional universe, there are countless versions of myself, and every minute, every second, countless versions of me split into even more versions of myself, continuously. This is why there is the so-called Mandela effect, because in one moment, Mandela is still alive, but in the next second, we have traveled to a timeline where Mandela has long been dead. Notably, besides splitting, it is possible to travel to other universes according to Einstein's theory. When gravity is strong enough, it can bend space-time, and once space-time is bent, we can travel through it to reach another timeline. Doing this episode reminds me of the manga I read as a child, Crest of the Royal Family. Since delving into these mysterious topics of the universe, I've been always thinking back to the story of the girl, Carol, who kept going back and forth between two timelines through the mysterious Nile River. If you've watched it and paid attention, you'll see that people in the other timeline can see our timeline and can actively come here, but we cannot or have not found a way. But this does not mean that timeline does not exist. In certain special cases, people can still slip into those parallel spaces. Maybe as a child reading stories, I didn't notice much, but thinking back now, perhaps the answer to the mysteries lies in stories written for children. What do you think? Do you believe parallel universes truly exist? Do you think timelines or these universes can cross each other? Please share your thoughts in the comments below the video.